Our fourth video will focus on the end of stave 1 and the way that Marley begins to attempt to get through to Scrooge through a variety of techniques that all link to gothic horror and traditional ghost stories, as well as themes of regret and redemption. So we're going to start with this line here. "How now," said Scrooge, "caustic and cold as ever, what do you want with me?" Note how Dickens writes, he says this in a caustic and cold way. Again, that word cold linking to themes of cold and warmth. We have the harsh alliteration there of caustic and cold. And also the term caustic, in case you don't know, means sarcastic. Scrooge is dismissive, he's disbelieving, he questions the spirit that has appeared before him. Marley's initial replies are very short and to the point, creating a sense of mystery. Much, "Ask me who I was. In life I was your partner. I can." Scrooge asks who he is, despite surely knowing, which again, a sign of disbelief. He's refusing to accept it. He again makes a joke, "You're particular," for a shade, showing that he is trying to sort of deflect his fear and lighten that tension. But there is some fear creeping in. He pauses in the middle of his question here. He is doubtful, which shows that that fear is creeping into the story, that tension is developing. Then we have some back and forth between Scrooge and the ghost, lots of questions, statements, declaratives being made, creating that sense of conflict. Scrooge replies in depth further down here after the ghost has asked him about whether or not he believes. What evidence do you have of me? Why do you doubt your senses? And Scrooge shows a growing confidence and resolution to deny what he sees. He is trying to be rational. He claims that bad food, a disorder of the stomach, affects the mind, affects the senses. He has a list here of items: an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of a potato. Again, it's humorous, it's sarcastic, even putting a cheesy pun here. There's more of gravy than of grave about you. That's that caustic attitude that was mentioned earlier, that sarcasm that he is showing here, a bit of defiance against the spirit. He doesn't believe. Again, remember, it is a humbug, it is nonsense to him. Dickens talks to the audience here directly, as he did earlier in the story. Scrooge was not in the habit of cracking jokes. Again, showing this is something unusual for Scrooge. He's not usually a humorous person, but that could suggest his nerves, him trying to escape this tension and fear that he's feeling. The ghost is described still with very harsh adjectives: fixed, glazed eyes. He also has an infernal atmosphere around him. That word infernal connoting to hell and religion and very negative emotive ideas for the Victorian audience. And again, this links back to the idea as well that his hair and clothes are moving around as if affected by hot air, the simile as by the hot vapour from an oven. As earlier, this is suggesting the idea that he is possibly in hell or in some sort of punishment. Scrooge continues to reject the spirit, implying that a toothpick, if swallowed, would allow him to see visions, hear visions, a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. He repeats that word again, humbug. I tell you, humbug. He believes it's all nonsense. He is trying to reject it despite the evidence of his own senses. Instead of talking in reply, the spirit raised a frightful cry, shook its chain. Again, very negative Gothic words being used here. A dismal and appalling noise, lots of sensory language to show the sort of the horror and the fear that's being created. The ghost takes off a bandage as well around its head, and this makes the jaw of the ghost actually fall down, almost like he's a rotting corpse. A very horrifying Gothic image that's very much of a Victorian ghost story. Scrooge is now affected. He is physically shaken. He holds on tight to his chair. He falls upon his knees, again almost showing that he is beneath the ghost. He's inferior. The power has changed. He clasps his hands before his face, possibly in prayer, in pleading, in terror. He cries out mercy. He is begging in this point. He is questioning, why do you trouble me? He is very, very much shaken. Marley then sets out a statement after getting Scrooge's acceptance that very much echoes Dickens' own beliefs. He states that all men should be part of society, But if it does not be part of society, if it does not walk among his fellow men and travel far and wide, if it does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. A very harsh negative word there, condemned, that idea of punishment and sin. We also have the word doomed to echo that as well. And the ghost shows a distress in what it is suffering here. Some pauses, very negative, short, sharp language. Oh, woe is me. Here it is shaking, it is wringing its shadowy hands, it is raising a cry. So we see that the ghost is suffering as well. And lots of personal pronouns here to show that it is responsible for its own suffering. I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link. I girded it of my own free will. Again, that idea and theme of free will here, and what you do with your free will eventually affect you and your afterlife and your future. And then the ghost lays out the pretty simple facts that this is what will happen to Scrooge. Or would you know? Again, that direct address speaking directly to Scrooge, who is trembling. The weight and length of the coil you bear yourself. Again, rhetorical question, repeating of the direct address. He says that this chain is ponderous, it's large, it's long, you have laboured on it, you have developed it, it is all around you. Scrooge even looks around him as if to see if he can see this chain, which is obviously a metaphoric chain for his afterlife. He begs, he implores, he asks for comfort. Again, emotive language here to show Scrooge's fear. But there is none to give, he says. This is not a time to give comfort. It is not for me to do. I'm here to warn you. I'm here to tell you of the dangers. Anaphora, used again, repeated. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger. A little triple there as well, to show that he is trapped. He is condemned. Again, that word being used. Dickens still has Scrooge using some humour here, some contrast, some conflict. You've 7 years dead, travelling all the time. Very negative word there. No torture and remorse, and incessant. It's not stopping. You travel fast, or you should have got more then. So Scrooge is still trying to show a little bit of defiance here, but as we can see, it doesn't work because the ghost is more powerful. It sets up another cry. It clanks its chains hideously. The dead silence of the night. Very gothic language here. And then the ghost lays out again some more negative, distressing words. Notice this language here. Captive, bound, and double ironed, a triple there. Incessant, again that word, continuing labour, the work that he is stuck on. We get this very negative sense of distress. He throws Scrooge's words back at him when Scrooge asks, you are a good man of business. To him, business is to do with wealth, to do with money, to do with the physical, whereas the ghost repeats this word business, but it says mankind should have been business, and we get a big long list of what business should be: charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence. Those are the things that you should have been paying attention to. Hyperbolic, exaggerated metaphor here, that all of this was just a drop of water in the ocean of my business. My things that I were doing were nothing compared to what I should have been doing. And again, this is that warning to Scrooge, and this is Dickens suggesting to his Victorian audience that they should also be paying attention to this. The ghost then references Christianity and Christmas in particular, with the blessed star that led the wise men, and thinking about this time of Christmas as a time when something very spiritual and positive should be taking place, and thinking about others, but instead he is not. We see Scrooge's reaction here again, very fearful. He is almost begging, don't be hard upon me, almost making commands. Pray. He is begging for help and support here, but he is not getting any. But then Marley reveals again this word penance. This is repentance for wrongdoing. He is here to warn Scrooge so he can escape the fate which Scrooge thanks him for. But again, then the ghost says, haunted, that Gothic language, you will be haunted by three spirits. He lays out the story here that is coming up. A little sense of humour here, again, that little humorous Dickens language. Scrooge's face countenance fell almost as low as the ghosts had done, so there's still that little bit of tension breaking in the middle of this very sort of suspense, heavy atmosphere. And Scrooge is worried about what's these ghosts to come. He is faltering, he is stuttering, I. He is fearful of what's happening. He hopes to take them all at once, the ghosts, instead of what is actually happening. The ghost as well says the bell tolls one. Again, that reference to bells, which are warning, just like at the middle of stave one. He lays out when they are coming and then goes to leave. But even as he leaves, again, we get ghostly gothic ideas and imagery. The window opens on its own, little by little, which again is a very sort of ghostly idea. And then we have some very negative sensory language outside, confused noises, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings, sorrowful, a mournful dirge, and a dirge is a lament for the dead. Lots of very dark negative language to end the stave. A bleak dark night, more of that pathetic fallacy there. And Scrooge seeing out the window phantoms, ghosts, spirits moaning, and all of them wearing chains. Note that Scrooge knew some of them. Many of them had been personally known to Scrooge. And this shows the sort of people that he would have kept company with. The wealthy, the cruel people, Dickens is criticising and showing that they are trying to now help in the afterlife, but are unable to assist the poor who they treated so badly in life and now are full of misery and have lost the power to help others. And for those alive, they still have the time to maybe help. The creatures disappear, again in a very gothic supernatural way, into mist, that pathetic fallacy being used. Scrooge tries to reject this. He checks the locks, he tries to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. He has changed a little bit. He is fearful, he's worried, and then it ends with him being completely exhausted and strained from the distress of what he has seen. Again, we get a list of what it could have been here, all these things, and he collapses, and so we end stave one with unconsciousness. Our next video will move into stave two and focus on the introduction and the presentation of the Ghost of Christmas